Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another weather forecast. My name is Evan Freiberger, and let's hop right into it. As you can see, we have winter weather advisories and warnings already out here for our first storm. That's going to start over here in southern Missouri, going into southern Illinois and Indiana with those winter weather advisories, transitioning more into winter storm warnings as we move into Louisville, Maysville, Charleston, Roanoke, Richmond, Washington, Baltimore, parts of Maryland, Delaware, southern New Jersey. Winter weather advisories making it all the way up into Pennsylvania and all the way down to the south here into parts of North Carolina as well. Moving back over to our second storm, we have winter weather advisories already issued out here for parts of Texas going up into Oklahoma, and winter storm watches over here in the blue extending all the way from Kansas up into Michigan, and winter storm warnings already being issued here for parts of Kansas going into Manhattan, Kansas City, and moving into Missouri like Trenton, Chillicothe, Maryville, and Kirksville as well. Hopping over to our future radar here, you can see but we're going to have some moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico, and we're going to start to see a lot of widespread rain pick up tonight going into early morning tomorrow, potentially even some thunderstorms possible back over here into the Texas, Oklahoma region, maybe even making it into Little Rock or Arkansas. And you can see to the north here we have some snow and some cold air starting to enter into the United States. Hopping over to the temperatures, you can see that it is getting colder and colder as we move throughout the night. Going into the 11th at around 3 a.m., we're going to start to see some negative degree temperatures pick up here in the northern United States, moving into the Ozarks and then also into the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. We're going to be talking about 20s and teens out there for a lot of folks as well. Warm air in the Gulf of Mexico is ready to be lifted up into the United States, which will help aid with our severe weather threat where we're watching out for a couple of tornadoes being possible with some damaging winds and some large hail. So moving into 4 a.m. on the 11th here, you can see we're going to really start to see that rain snow line set up here into southern Missouri, Illinois, southern Indiana, most of Kentucky, moving into West Virginia and Virginia as well. And as I continue to push this forward into 7 a.m., we really start to see that snow pick up here for Louisville, Cincinnati, Charleston, areas like Roanoke, with some mixed precip already getting started over here near Oklahoma with some sleet and some rain possible and maybe some isolated snowflakes. Also widespread snow happening over here near Nebraska, Colorado, and parts of Kansas as well. It's going to be on the light side of things, but some snow should get started by around 7 a.m. there, and a lot of rain really extending all the way from Nashville down into south of Little Rock, Shreveport, Dallas, Killeen. Could also be seeing some thunderstorms down there as the storm gets started as we move into tomorrow morning. Pushing this further into the future as we get into around 12 p.m. This is when we're really going to start to see some heavier snow all the way up here in most of West Virginia, southern Ohio, also southern Indiana, northern Kentucky, northern Virginia as well. At around 12 p.m. is where we should start to see some of that heavier snowfall pick up there for Washington, be about to move into Baltimore as well. Richmond could be getting either a mixed precip, sleet, or some heavy snow happening there with some freezing rain happening up here in Appalachia. For North Carolina going into northern Georgia with still thunderstorms possible all the way down here into parts of Texas, moving into Shreveport as well with some sleet back over here into parts of Oklahoma, north of Tulsa going into Springfield. Still a little bit of snow happening over here in Nebraska and Colorado, but that's essentially just going to be an appetizer of what's to come with our next storm system. So we'll be talking about that in just a little bit. But continuing to push the future radar forward, you can really see that we're going to continue to see some snow for pretty much an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 7 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours of some heavier snow up here into northern Virginia, going into Maryland, parts of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, also Delaware as well, getting some decent snow. Even Long Island could pick up on some moderate snow at times, leading to some accumulation up there with a thunderstorm, line of thunderstorms reaching really from Atlanta through Tuscaloosa, southern Arkansas, and near Shreveport as we move into 1 a.m. here on the 12th. And it's also at around this time where we're going to start to say goodbye to this snowstorm and say hello to our next snowstorm that's going to be happening over here near the Central Plains here, mainly talking about areas like Kansas, also Nebraska, northern Missouri, going into Iowa as well, with the freezing rain and sleet line setting up here in Oklahoma and starting to get started there in Missouri, Illinois, southern Indiana, moving into northern Kentucky and southern Ohio, parts of West Virginia and the Appalachians, as well as we start to see a little bit heavier rain and some more thunderstorm possibilities over here south and east of Dallas, in between Dallas and Houston, and also into southern Arkansas as we move into 4 a.m. on the 12th. Now, the 12th is one of the days that we're going to be watching out for the increased risk for some tornadoes, damaging winds, and some hail, especially down here in the the southeast. One of the things they're going to be keeping a close eye on throughout the day is going to be this instability. But as you can see in the early morning hours, it really hasn't started just yet. Pushing this over a couple more hours here. You can see over here near Topeka, northern Missouri, as we move into 7 a.m. on the 12th. Most of Iowa, still Kansas and Nebraska getting in on a decent amount of moderate to heavy snow, especially over here near Kansas City. We could be seeing some pretty heavy snow at this time, where that rain to sleet line and freezing rain line is really setting up here. The pink, dark pink here is that freezing rain. The lighter pink is that sleet. Really, almost the entire portion of the southern Ohio Valley and the Ozarks here, also moving into most of Oklahoma City, northwest of Tulsa, and just to the west of Oklahoma City, we have a line there of some freezing rain. So hazardous driving conditions will be getting started here at around 7 a.m. on your morning commute here on the 12th. Down a little bit further to the south, still see some thunderstorms exist. Switching over to the instability, you can see our severe weather threat really hasn't gotten underway. We're looking for some bright greens like what we see over the Gulf of Mexico, but that hasn't quite entered into the United States at this time. So we're mainly thinking in the early morning hours, some thunderstorms and maybe some worsening travel conditions, as there will be a decent amount of rain, maybe some flooding happening at this point here in northern Louisiana, going into northern Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Pushing this 3 more hours into the future, you can see that most of northern Missouri is covered here in some heavier snowfall happening. That heavier snowfall is also starting to make its way into areas like Illinois, also most of Wisconsin, southern Minnesota, all of Iowa, the southeast corner of Nebraska, and most of Kansas are getting in on either some light to moderate, and in these darker blues and whites, some heavy snow, especially near where most of our moisture is going to be lifting out of the Gulf of Mexico up over into the freezing line here. Also, at around 10 a.m. is when we're going to be expecting some snow to start over here near Chicago as well, and just about to be entering into Michigan. Still decent amount of freezing rain kind of in the same areas. Definitely going to watch out, especially back here in southern Missouri, where that freezing rain is definitely going to be piling up as we're getting some heavier precipitation mounts there, and still some freezing rain potential over here in the Appalachian Mountains with some sleet and maybe some light snowfall happening as far east as northern Virginia and also here into parts of Pennsylvania. Continuing to push this into 1 p.m., you can really see that this storm is getting organized. Large area here, we're going to see some moderate to heavy snowfall. Still ongoing as we go into 1 p.m. here on the 12th. Topeka is still in some heavier snow. Also, northern Missouri, the heavier snow is really starting to get started over here near Springfield, Bloomington, and Chicago. Most of Michigan is now going to be in some heavier snow. Same over here near Wisconsin, and still all of Iowa is either in some light or moderate snowfall. Still seeing that freezing rain line getting a little bit more intense as we move into 1 p.m. here into the central portions of the Ohio Valley, also parts of the eastern portion of the United States, moving into the Appalachians. Then down here to the south, we are really watching out for that instability. Around 1 p.m. is when we're going to start to see this start to organize. Our severe weather threat here is going to start to get a little bit stronger. 850 millibar jet is going to be starting to organize as well, so you can't even rule out the potential for some severe weather and tornadoes at this point. Coming over to our future radar, though, you can see our storms are still struggling. They're not going to really mature until later into the nighttime hours. Technically, the environment is there even at 1 p.m. to support some severe weather. As I continue to push this forward just a couple more hours, you can see that moving into around 4 or 5 p.m., that heavier snow is starting to really move out of the Ozarks here in the Central Plains and starting to push into the northern Ohio Valley and the Great Lakes here, as our heaviest snow is over here now into northern Indiana and southern Michigan. I almost called it Wisconsin. I don't know why. And you can see below this, we have some pretty heavy sleet possible to the south of the snow line, and then also some pretty heavy freezing rain possible for portions of central Illinois, Indiana, going up into northern Ohio, even nosing into parts of Pennsylvania again, with some sleet possible to the east of that, and then still some potential freezing rain happening over here in the Appalachians of West Virginia, going into North Carolina, with some snow starting to push up into even New York and eastern Pennsylvania. And again, this is at 5 p.m. here on the 12th. Moving back down to the southeast, you can really tell that these brighter greens are increasing and moving further north, and this is setting the stage here for the beginning of our severe weather event. We could have some severe weather and maybe a small tornado chance before this point, but it's right around this point where we really start to see that threat organize. Our lower level jet is going to start increasing from this point on into the night, and also our upper level jet as well. And anywhere that we see some thunderstorm activity is where we're going to be worried for some tornadoes to happen and some damaging winds. As of around 5 p.m. on the NAM, not really too much happening on this line, but I think that's a little bit unrealistic. I think when we get the HRRR in, we might see some thunderstorms and maybe even some organized severe weather by this point. So just be ready for that if you live in western Mississippi and northern Louisiana, going all the way down into Houston as we move into 5 p.m. here on the 12th. Switching over to the temperatures briefly, you can see it's going to be pretty warm down here in the southeast as we move into 5 p.m. and also pretty cold on the backside of this low pressure system. Talking about teens going into the 20s all the way down into parts of Oklahoma. We're going to see some below freezing temperatures, some negative degree temperatures up there near North Dakota. Also, some of those colder temperatures pushing down into the Ohio Valley, which is why we're going to have such a separation here between some of our snow and mixed precip. As you can see, just below some of these pinks are some lighter blues. That is above freezing temperatures, really reaching all the way up into central Ohio, Indiana, and southern Illinois, transitioning some of that snow into more of some mixed precip. So that's why we're going to have kind of a snow hole here in those regions. Pushing this into 10 p.m., you can see that our storm is now lifted off a little bit further to the north and east. Some heavier snow is starting over here in the northeast, over here in eastern Pennsylvania, northern New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, parts of Massachusetts, and New York as well, with some heavier snow really picking up over here into northern Indiana. Most of Michigan is getting some snow. On the backside of this thing, though, we're going to start to see some drier air move in, and a lot of those snow accumulations start to dry up over there, with still some freezing rain happening over here north of Indianapolis and going into northwest Ohio. So it's going to be a long portion of time here where this freezing rain is going to be sticking around, and that's going to definitely cause some travel issues, especially in some of these higher populated regions where there's a lot of car travel. Back over here to the southeast at around 10 p.m., this is when we're really expecting our severe weather threat to be as elevated as it will be, in my opinion. We have a nice healthy corridor here of some storm food, some instability. Going over to our lower level jet, you can see it's really starting to increase as it ejects here into eastern Mississippi, eastern, southeastern Louisiana, and then our highest amounts of lower level shear are mainly into the Alabama region at this time. We're talking about 10 p.m. here on the 12th, and then our upper level jet is starting to intensify there, especially in northern Alabama there. And coming over to our future radar, you can see we have multiple thunderstorms out in this area as this environment increases in danger pretty much. So definitely got to keep an eye on these storms. Could be some widespread severe weather here, and definitely a chance for a couple of tornadoes throughout the day. But this is going to be a little bit of a slow moving line, so there's a lot of failure modes here. There's no guarantee that we're going to get tornadoes. But besides some of the failure modes, if you can get a maturing cell that can be surface based in this environment, definitely cannot rule out a tornado as we move into the nighttime hours of the 12th and early morning hours of the 13th. Back over to the last frames here of our NAM 3K kilometer model here, you can see that we are still going to have some snow up here in the northeast. Beyond this point, beyond 12 a.m. on the 13th throughout the morning hours, this is going to extend up into Maine, so we're still expecting some extra snow up there through Maine. And over the next couple of hours after 12 a.m., we're going to start to see this heavier snow move out of Michigan and also northern Indiana, kind of up into Canada, with mainly rain and sleet and also some freezing rain over here near Pennsylvania and New York. Maybe even some thunderstorms as far south as Kentucky and parts of Tennessee as well as we move past 12 a.m. And you can see down here into the southeast, we still have some instability out in front of this thing. Still have a strengthening lower level jet as this goes into central Alabama, and our upper level winds are still going. So barring any failure modes, we could still easily have a tornado threat existing. Even at 12 a.m., I could see this moving into parts of Georgia and South Carolina throughout the rest of the 13th before our atmosphere becomes a little bit less favorable for this kind of severe weather. Now, in terms of our snow totals for our first winter storm, we're going to be talking about anywhere from a couple of inches in the kind of light blue to 4 to 5 inches here in the dark blue. And in this purple region, we can see anywhere from 5 to 8 inches and maybe even up to a foot in some of our higher elevations here in West Virginia and Virginia. The areas in the pink and blue are Harrisburg, Staunton, Fredericksburg, Clarksburg, Charleston, Huntington, Morgantown, Romney, Beckley, Maysville, Lexington, Danville, Berea, Radcliffe, Elizabethtown, Roanoke, just north of Richmond, Salisbury, Georgetown, Dover, Wilmington, Vineland, Atlantic City, Berkeley Township, and Stafford Township, and Trenton could all get anywhere from 5 inches of snow to 8 inches of snow. So just be watching out there for that snow threat. Definitely going to make travel a little bit difficult. Back over here, looks like we are getting a fresh run come in on on our national forecast database. But really, anywhere from Kansas going into Missouri, also Illinois, and into most of Michigan. This is a little bit lower than what it will show when the model run finishes. But this is kind of a general view. This is the NAM 3K kilometers run here. And you can see widespread 4 to 5 inches here for parts of Kansas going up in Nebraska, maybe even some isolated spots of 6 inches to 10 inches. But it's mainly going to be in these purple regions where we're going to see some of our heaviest snowfall. And I really do think over here near Chicago, Bloomington, northern Indiana, going into southern Michigan, we could see some of our heaviest snowfall amounts of up to almost a foot of snow in some areas. So definitely keep your eye out there. Definitely going to be some of the best snow you've seen all year for some of these areas. And definitely have your snow shovels ready, as your driveway will get covered enough to potentially prevent your car from leaving it. Over here, unfortunately, near St. Louis, Indianapolis, Bellefontaine, and Cleveland, Pittsburgh, you guys are in a pretty big snow hole here, but you definitely do have those chances still for some freezing rain and some sleet. So watch out for those dangerous driving conditions as your roads start to turn into a skating rink. Another thing that we are looking out for, the potential, is going to be that rain accumulation. We do have some interesting areas here that we're a little bit concerned about for some flooding. Really, anybody in this circle from eastern Texas, Louisiana, southern Arkansas, northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, northern Georgia, southern Kentucky, and most of Tennessee is going to have to be watching out for some flooding issues. Also, some of the areas that were impacted here by Helene could get some isolated spots here of over a foot of rain. So if you live in some of those heavily impacted areas, I would certainly consider relocating for a little bit if your infrastructure is still pretty weak and you don't have any confidence that it's going to withstand yet another foot of rain. Could be quite the dangerous scenario if these numbers really do confirm here into parts of western North Carolina. Yeah, big strip here of potentially 10 to almost a foot of rain for a lot of folks over here into northern Mississippi, going into Alabama, and this is just over a couple of days, folks. So the flooding potential is certainly going to be there, especially in this pink area. So watch out for some widespread heavier rain if you live in the central or the southern plains going into the southeast, even over there into the eastern portion of the United States, where we could see a little bit of rain at the east coast. But yeah, folks, that's going to be it for me on my forecast. Sorry for hitting y'all's notifications a little bit early there. I posted a video without watching it and my audio was all messed up. Of course, I choose the one time not to check and the audio messes up. But regardless, thank you guys so much for watching. If you do enjoy this video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys on the next forecast. Peace.